What's up, y'all? It's Cousin Chet. How you doing today? Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Glad to see everybody. You might recognize this guy. Last time I had long hair and he had the short hair. Now he's got the long hair. Woo! And I got the short hair. My buddy Dillion, nice to see you again, bro. How you doing? Oh, that's right. You broke your hand.
That's good.
So I hear you weren't hugging trees. You were punching trees, huh?
Yeah, I punched a tree. It was some ignorant shit.
Right.
It was just somebody made me mad. And
Right.
like I said, dumb.
Yeah.
It was dumb, but
I did that once, but I took a golf club. The tree still won,
yeah.
but it was a golf club.
I went out. I feel like I'm usually a pretty laid back, easygoing guy, but yeah, I've taken a sledgehammer to a tree before too. Now that I look back on it,
I've definitely heard that. I think
it's definitely a theme.
right. It's sometimes dealing with your anger is kind of tough. You know, especially like for a man with a bunch of testosterone, you get that rage. And men and women, whatever. I get it. We all deal with emotions, and we all deal with.
Well, we were talking about that earlier about specifically naivety.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I've always kind of been the guy who kind of tries to stay calm, tries to keep everybody else calm.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the last 2 or 3 years I've had, it was like I never have had anger issues in my life. Like I've always kind of been able to just, you know what, like it'll suck for a while, but it'll be chipper if you make it chipper again. It was just another way of saying, like, I could always, like, I never had any real anger to deal with. Like, I never had, like, anything personally, like, stick in my craw so deep that it was, like, I couldn't put the anger out of my mind. And then, like, about 3 years ago, it was, like, I got thrust into several. It was one thing in particular, but it was like essentially I felt betrayed.
Mm-hmm.
I felt this enormous betrayal, and it was like starting 3 years ago. It was like I had to reset everything because it was like it kind of struck me that like it struck me that. This anger's not going away, and this anger's probably not going away because it's probably it's probably justified. I probably should feel entitled to be angry in one way or another. It doesn't mean I should let the anger do all my thinking or all my talking or all of my decision making for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, I come here. Like to this building
To work out.
Yeah, to just burn off as much steam as I possibly could. And then it was like all these people in my family and like all these friends that I'd known, I started noticing that like I didn't start to notice it. It was just suddenly the people around me got betrayed pretty much in an almost one-for-one manner. Mine had to do with a romantic relationship, but it was like it's family stuff. It was like suddenly it was like, okay, everybody else is feeling betrayed now. I've kind of taken the last 2.5 years trying to deal with it the best I can. And it was like the thing that me and all those other faceless people I'm throwing out there.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I and they all had in common, this is what I did know how to anticipate and how, this is what I had to offer when that came around was usually like the anger that's hard to manage, for my money, it seems like it always stems from, to a certain degree, the naivety of I'm getting all lost in the weeds now just because there's a camera on.
I know, right?
But
I'm over here coughing. I'm all self-conscious about it and shit.
yeah, but I was thinking about like that conversation we had about projection.
Yeah.
And how it's like there's two types of error you can make projecting. It's like the first one is, well, I don't really want to. The first one is you don't really want to deal with all of your bullshit. You don't want to deal with your negativity. So you distract yourself from it by spotting it in everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the projection of, well, I just want everybody to get along. I just am kind of happy. I'm happy to do with less, if it means everybody else kind of gets raised up to the same level I'm at. You can project that in other people and think, okay, well, if that's how I feel, obviously that's what everybody else's prerogative is. And honestly, in hindsight, I don't know which one of those errors is worse to make. Because the naive sort of projection of, well, don't we all want to get along? That's what I want. So I assume that's what Chet wants. I assume that's what Nancy wants. In a lot of ways, I think the consequences of the naivety are almost even starker than that other sort of that sort of traditional sense of projection of, oh well, I'm a horny cretinous person deep down, but instead of dealing with that, I'll just become super orthodox strict and I'll religiously critique everybody else's sexual etiquette. That's the classic example as far as I know, but that's kind of the sort of projection everybody's familiar with. But I don't know if everybody's familiar with the projection of your own naivety onto other people, because that opens the door for you to get betrayed. And betrayal, the kind of anger and the spite that walks around with you when you get betrayed. Like I said, up until about 2 or 3 years ago, I never had any anger issues. I would, if I got angry, it would quickly turn to sadness of, well, yeah, that's a shitty situation, but now I guess I'll move on. But it's like I've never had an episode of anger that lasted more than a day. And and if you're not endeavoring to be self-critical, and if you're not willing to take that at face value for what, like if you're not willing to deal with the anger and you're not willing to address the naivety that put you there in the first place, I kind of suspect that'll turn you into an even more unsavory person than even that German Baptist lady who's always handing out knee-length skirts.
You know, I want to kind of go back to the projection thing, because I think to try to help make sure I understand what you're saying and to kind of boil it down a little bit, I think a little bit of what you're saying is there's one way to project your mind out into the other outside world, which is one of the ways is to assume that everybody thinks and acts and wants the same things I do. And the other way is to say that nobody wants the same things that I do and nobody's doing good. So I think what you were trying to say is like you project like I'm going to be the helper to help them all get there. Is that what the other one is? Because I totally get the one side where I think everybody thinks like me. Everybody wants the same things I want. Like, I think a lot of people fall into that trap. But I didn't really understand the other you said there's two types of projection.
Yeah, there's the negative projection and there's the positive projection.
So the negative one was I'm not going to deal with my own stuff, so I'm just going to look for it in everybody else. Okay.
But yeah, I think this, I guess I'm trying to get to a metaphysical place where it's like, okay, beyond just good and evil, who are the good guys and who are the bad guys? I think there's a more fundamental problem that people deal with, which is projecting your negative emotions and your negative intentions onto everybody else, and projecting the most positive, the quote unquote good things, projecting that onto other people. I think it's just two sides of the same coin, which is this. It's ultimately intellectual laziness. And I'm not accusing everybody of being like intellectual couch potatoes. I mean, I think you kind of get conditioned to see things that way, where it's like, I think it's an easy out. I think it's an easy intellectual out for people to just look for the things they already recognize, instead of taking a single person and asking yourself, okay, objectively, not even objectively, how much do I understand about this person? How much can I understand from where they're coming from opposed to me? In other words, I think I've noticed that people do this a lot. I've probably only noticed this mostly because of the internet. But it's like people have this tendency to project either the best in themselves or the worst in themselves. And that's what they're paying attention to in everybody else.
I don't disagree. I think, there's biases and there's blind spots and there's ignorance. And I think one of the ignorance is being aware that you're doing something like that. So if you think that everybody is going to do the same things the way that you do, and you expect everybody to do that, you're going to be let down a lot, because not everybody is who you are. Not everybody thinks like you do. They don't like the same things. They don't think like you do. And so to expect everybody to do that, I think, is folly. And I think where it really comes down and where it can be dangerous is in your relationships. Like, if you don't recognize that there's more than one way to skin a cat, and that you might skin a cat differently than I do, and both ways of skinning a cat are just fine, like, it doesn't matter. The cat got skinned. This is probably not 2022 talk. Like, who wants to talk about skinning a cat? Come on, Chet, update. But you know what I mean? Like, there's more than one way to clean your room. There's more than one way to make your bed. Yeah, they're not that different, but just because they don't put the left corner on first and the feet corner and whatever, you know what I mean? Like,
well, I was actually talking to my brother about that a week or so ago. And I was explaining, we were talking about like that whole Jordan Peterson idea of clean your room, bucko. And he asked me, he was like, okay, playing devil's advocate, he was like, I understand that the cleaning your room, like, yeah, it's better to live somewhere that's clean other than not. And he was like, but what if you got bigger problems than to get your room clean? He was like, what if the problems are so big you can't even solve them? He was like, what kind of advice is that? And my response was, well, look, it's not about the cleaning. Like, it's not just about, well, how do I become a more benevolent person? How do I become a cleanlier person? It's like, it has more to do with the control it gives you to clean your room. It doesn't even matter whether it's clean or not. Point is, did you take this room, this space, it's in your authority, it's your room. Do you have this space? Have you engaged with it enough to where you control the way your day plays out when you're in that room? Or do you just kind of fall into that room and just fall over and go comatose until somebody makes you go to work?
I think, and I don't remember the specific Jordan Peterson quote that you're referring to of clean your room, bucko, but I do remember there was I want to say it was a Navy admiral a couple years ago that gave a big speech about make your bed, right? And part of it was, if I can remember that speech and the gist of it, part of what I understood that admiral to be saying was, you start your day by accomplishing something. And when you come back at the end of the day, you don't come back to to a dirty room and an unmade bed. You come back to a clean made bed. You come back to a room. And so I can speak for myself being a kind of spatial person that I know what my moods are depending on how clean my room is. When I'm super depressed, I'm like Chap. I feel like I don't even have the energy to worry about picking up these clothes right now because I'm spending my energy trying to solve this other problem that's just much bigger than whether or not my clean clothes are still in a basket needing folded. You know what I mean? Or the fact that my dirty clothes are in a pile on the floor, or that my bed's not made, or that I've got a couple dishes laying around, or whatever have you, right? Like, but when I'm in a good mood, my room's clean, like things are organized, it's dusted. And so one thing that I know as being a person who suffers from depression, that when my room gets like that, first of all, that's a sign that I've been depressed. Usually I know that. I'm pretty self-aware of what's going on with me. Like, for instance, right now, I've been kind of in this funk for like the last month. There's nothing wrong. I just am low energy. And for me, it's a depression. And it comes with suicidal thoughts and all kinds of other unhappy shit. But I persevere. One of the things I know that I need to do is clean my room, right? Because just by the act of cleaning my room and getting that accomplished, I feel a little better. That's how my depression works for me. I've often told people, if you have a friend that's depressed, the best thing you can do to help them is go help them start knocking out some tasks.
Yeah.
Because for me, part of what triggers my depression is getting overwhelmed. And then I get overwhelmed, I go to a freeze spot, right? Fight or flight. Well, I have freeze. I think that's its own category. And then that's what, manifests as depression. Okay. And then because I've frozen, the world doesn't stop. Things don't, entropy still happens, right? Like if I'm not exerting the energy to organize it, entropy is still going to happen. So when I'm depressed and I don't have that energy to exert, the chaos continues. And so now I'm even heavier under the chaos.
So then when you go back to your room or you go back to your house, every time you go in there, it's just a reminder of, oh yeah, things suck.
Kind of. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's more of it's a symptom, right? And so for me, like as a friend, the best way you can help me get out of my depression, come over and help me clean my house. Come over and help me clean my room. Come over and help me organize my bills. Come over and help me get out of under the chaos. Help me stop the entropy and start to organize again. Because now what that does for me is I start feeling like I'm less overwhelmed. Oh, I've got something accomplished. Maybe there's a little trigger in my brain, right? A little dopamine, a little trigger reward kind of thing. Like, good job. You got something done. At least you got something done. You know what I mean? And now when I walk into my room, I don't go, man, I need to do this and that and this and that and this and that. And it's so, and life is overwhelming and I'm depressed. And now like my brain just shuts down and now all I want to do is sleep.
Well, it's like, speaking to the cleaning thing or the organizing thing specifically, I've always found that when my shit's a mess, when everything is falling apart, for whatever reason, I almost never this attitude almost never kicks in when it comes to my car. My car's a wreck. But whenever I am kind of feel like I'm stuck bumblefucking around, and I'm just kind of sitting in my own filth, it's like, it doesn't have to be like a checklist. Like, you don't have to make an actual list. It's like, make it free form. I always try to do it free form. It's like, well, if I'm overwhelmed with things to do, I just pick something, start doing it, put my mind on something else while I get it done. And I'll get a lot more done than I initially anticipated. Like if you just kind of take all of those pressures off, if you take the pressure out of it and it's more like, okay, well, this room, like I said, it's not about the cleaning, it's about, well, what kind of, for me at least, it's like, what's the control you're getting? And it's like, the control doesn't necessarily have to mean I made myself a fucking list and I did everything on the fucking list because I'm the man. I mean, it's more like, okay, well, I have this room. I'm gonna be here tomorrow morning. I'm gonna come back like tomorrow night.
I think
And
different people, and this goes back to different people handle things differently, right? Because like maybe you don't suffer from depression.
yeah, maybe.
You know, maybe part of you. So your fight or flight response is, I'm overwhelmed. I'm sitting in my own stink. Let me fight back against the entropy,
It's
and
more
let me
like
go organize.
it's more like learning to see the room as like a canvas. It's like looks like shit right now.
But see, I want to go back to this projection thing, right? Because that's how you see it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you're saying you're saying, well, if you would look at it this way, if you look at it as a canvas, you would take this perception.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas most people, not everybody's going to have that perception of their room, right? For some people, their room is their castle or it's their cave or,
Yeah,
like there's a lot of different ways
And
that
I
people are
don't,
going
I
to.
don't. It's that's what I mean. It's not specifically about the room. It's not about just the organization. There's. I don't know. At any rate, for me at least. Yeah.
Well, what I'm saying is that for me as a depressed person, it is because that entropy, that unorganized, does not facilitate me moving out of a depressive episode. Right? What facilitates me moving out of a depressive episode is getting that overwhelming stuff taken care of. So for me, the list is important because otherwise I've just got 10,000 things running around in my head and I can't pick one. But once I get to write them down and I put a list, then I can pick one and I can, okay, I'm gonna go brush my teeth. I know it's a small thing, right? But if you are a person that suffers from clinical depression, you will know that that's a big fucking deal on some days, right? Like the fact that I got up, that I went and took a shower and brushed my teeth, like for a super depressed person, that can be a lot. And for a person that doesn't suffer from depression, to be like, well, if you just do this and if you just do that, like you're really just skating over the idea that everybody has different ways of doing things.
Yeah. Well, that kind of that does say something about you, I think, because. Well, like I put it this way, like I've always kind of had this like condition of like feeling like I've always more or less felt like I'm a head, like I'm a brain floating around in a body. And I kind of picked up on that a few years back, and so I started. That was about when I started going to the gym, and I started thinking about like started paying a lot of attention to my diet and the kinds of things I was eating every day. And it was like as soon as I started doing that, I started feeling like I was in my body more. And so, like when I say it's not about the room, I mean, I don't make a list. You might make a list. But fundamentally, it's the same task getting achieved. It's like, it's structuring your life. It's structuring your environment. Like, it whatever term you could use to, like, paint a broad brush stroke. I think there's something in common there, though. I think it's the same. We have the same problem. The room's fucking dirty. But it's like there's a process by which you kind of learn to just. And like it's like you said, it's like it's obviously different for everybody. Everybody's got a different angle that they're looking at it from. But there's something there to me about. How do like you were saying, brush your teeth? It's like, okay, well, if your teeth feel like they're all gunked up, like you have dirt caked on your teeth, even if it's not that far gone, but it's like just a little bit of plaque sitting on your teeth can make it feel like your face is 5 pounds
Got me
heavier.
feeling my teeth now.
Yeah, but it's like it gives you some control because it's like, okay, well, I need to physically feel okay. I need to physically feel like it's my body and it's not me buried under all this dirt.
Yeah. I think one of the things that just in this small conversation that I, in this kind of idea of projection and I'm going to stick with the kind of idea that a lot of us just assume that other people think like we do.
Yeah.
And they want to, like, I think that's a common way that a lot of humans will approach life. especially younger. I think as you get older, I think people with kids start to realize like, oh wow, people are different. People are motivated different, right? People who are educated in psychology, they will understand these things. That people are motivated differently, but you know, if the threat is the dirty room, right? We're both processing that differently, and I'm using the dirty room as a threat, like as a thing that will create an overwhelmingness.
There's chaos.
And so it's chaos, right? It's entropy, right? And so how do you fight back? You have a fight response, right? Your response is, I don't need a list. I just need to pick one thing, go do it, get it done. I'm gonna start knocking these things out one by one by one. And I'm gonna get more done than what I thought because I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna fight and I'm gonna take care of it. The same thing I can say as far as how you reacted to whatever the stressful situation of the betrayal that you experienced that motivated you to start coming to the gym and eating your diet, right? That was a fight response for you, right? Whereas maybe me or your brother would have chosen to go lay in the bed and think about it and spend our energy and thought trying to resolve it, which doesn't really help the rumination. But nonetheless, so you've chosen some positive coping mechanisms, right? How do I deal with it? I can't go punch a tree every day because I can only break my hand once in a while. And I can't go kill whoever it is that betrayed me, right? I can't go unleash my anger out at these people. I don't want to internalize it, so I'm going to go work out.
Or even a little less serious than that. Oh, I can't actually voice any of my understanding about what happened to the person who betrayed me because ultimately I don't really think they care.
Right.
So I would be wasting my time to try and go make amends. Yeah.
But what I'm trying to get towards is that just that difference in fight, flight, or freeze responses dictates a lot of how people are responding to life and the stresses that life brings at them. I would consider that depression is a freeze response. I think there's some people that put freeze in a flight response, but to me, flight takes action and you get the out, right? A bear comes at me, fight, flight, freeze, right? If I fight, I'm fighting back at the bear. That's pretty solid. If I flight, I'm trying to run. And if I freeze, people say that's a mental flight, but to me, freeze is its own thing because you're not taking any action. You're just frozen. You're stuck right there in the moment, which with the bear might not be a bad idea because some do say you just lay down, act like you're dead.
Well, I think everybody wants to put a value judgment on one or the other.
There is that, right? Because everybody values one or the other. Like, who wants to be the depressed guy that does nothing? That gets,
the way you value fight, flight, or freeze, whichever one is your natural response, to a degree, that is a form of projection too. Which one you place priority in, because if it's a bear, you'll probably be better off with a fight response because you might dash towards the bear and freak it out and it'll run away.
No, you're supposed to lay down. You're actually, according to the recommendations, you're supposed to freeze.
Well, yeah.
You're not supposed to fight back unless you got a big gun.
I'm not a bear expert, but granted, it's like, point is, one freezing in one scenario is the right decision. It is the right course to take.
Sure.
Fighting in the right scenario is the right course to take.
Sure.
Running away is the right response. There's such a thing as a tactical retreat.
Sure.
It's like they're all initial responses.
And I think that a lot of people, though, they'll have their, and I think my natural response is fight. I think that partially because my mom was a single mom and because she knew that she was always going to be smaller than me, like she kind of worked against my fight. She was like, no, I don't want this dude fighting, right? And then because of the violence and the chaos that I experienced as a young person and kind of like a PTSD responses, I was in a situation where I saw people fighting on a regular basis and tremendous amounts of violence, and I couldn't do anything but just sit there. I couldn't leave, right? That's one reason why I have a great imagination, because or the
put
free.
yourself
I did do a
somewhere
mental flight then. When you go to another place, that's a mental flight. But it also manifests in depression, because as an adult, that those same coping mechanisms have turned into, for me, clinical depression. Right? I can't do anything. What's the psychological learned helplessness? Right? I can't do anything. My brain's like, you can't do anything, so why even try? Right? And I'm not trying to get too far on that. What I'm saying is that people have their natural tendencies. They also have the tendencies that they grew up with and that were shaped, right? Nature, nurture. I think both apply. And so as time goes on, people learn those. Now, I agree with you. Different circumstances need different responses. And hopefully a mentally healthy person will be able to adjust those responses depending on the circumstance.
That's kind of what I was getting at earlier when we were talking, is it's like, well, can you see the strings? Can you make an account of what are the strings that are gonna pull, that are gonna pull you, they're gonna push you, they're gonna manipulate you. You know, whether it's the epinephrine, the adrenaline's gonna do something to you when it kicks in.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you, that's what I mean when I say, like, I guess the thing that sticks with me about the idea of projection is the thing that I think the reason why it's on my mind so much is because, like I said, there is a sort of like unintellectualism to it.
Yeah.
And I think what that is like, it's really been on my mind, because it's like it once you start looking for it, you know, once you start paying attention to what people talk about and how they talk about things, you notice how everybody projects one way or another.
Yeah.
When you start noticing it, and I'm talking about myself as much as anybody else, but to me it's like, I have a hard time relating to people who aren't that curious. I have a hard time wrapping my mind around people who just don't have that desire to find out something new that they didn't know the day before.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's kind of like the spice of life. And it's like, in a way, I don't think the lack of curiosity is separate from the issue of projection. Because if you're projecting around on everybody else, well, it's kind of like you already assume you know. You assume you already know you know what the other person's about.
You know and you know what should be done. You know the best thing. You're the smartest person in the room.
Yeah, and like I said, I try to be. To me, it feels like cleaning your room. For me, that's what it feels like, to sort of take an assessment and be like, okay, I could run, I could freeze, or I could fight. Now, if I fight, there's not like that. That's fighting boils things down to one option, more or less. It's a zero-sum game if I'm in a physical fight with something.
Yeah, but we're talking about cleaning the room, right? Let's look at the room as the threat. So fighting and cleaning the room is simply like
freezing allows me to wait and get more information. Or it allows me to camouflage and not be seen. And then running away means I'm going to get as far away as possible as I can until there's some better options. I mean,
or at least until the threat's removed, right? Like, okay, let me get as far away from the threat as possible.
Yeah, and it's like, for me, it's like the process of saying, okay, if I'm in a situation that sends the adrenaline spike, there's really only three logical there's three strings.
Mm-hmm.
Which string is gonna pull the easiest or the quickest? Which response am I not used to?
Mm-hmm.
Which of those just seems like it's not an option? And my point being is, it's like, okay, well, understanding how it is that your mind deals with the problem.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's kind of the same. That seems like the same process as actually cleaning your car or cleaning your room or just organizing stuff. Like it's like a process of organizing things internally, and I mean, in a way, I guess it's like it kind of grinds my gears a little bit how like very few people that you'll meet like on the day to day stop and really ask themselves philosophical questions. I mean, it's like what Socrates, that Socrates quote, the unexamined life. I mean, the unexamined life is the unhappiest, something akin to that. I can't remember the exact quote.
I can't remember. It's something like it isn't worth living.
No, yeah, the unexamined life isn't worth living.
Is it?
And it's like I don't know where I think free will is if it's not in the process of understanding, okay, what are all the strings that are pulling me?
Mm-hmm.
What's always guiding the course of my decisions?
See, I think, bringing up Socrates is actually a really cool thing to bring into this, because Socrates, first of all, he pissed a lot of people off. People don't like to be questioned. There's a lot of people, bro, they don't want that curiosity. They want to go through life hum and numb. If everything is cool, if it's not broke, don't fix it. There's no need to investigate those things. There's no, and for some people, it's kind of like Chap said about cleaning a room. Why am I going to worry about what Donald Trump's doing when I'm worried about what I'm going to put on the table tomorrow? How I'm going to feed my kids tomorrow.
Yeah.
Why am I worried about what Hunter Biden's doing if I got to worry about how I'm going to put gas, or how am I going to, can I afford to take my mom to her hospital appointment tomorrow? Can I put food on the table? You know what I mean? I just lost my job. Am I going to get it? You know what I mean? Like, these things are immediate for people, so they don't have time to think about it. And then once they get to a comfortable hum, well, I don't want to spend my time thinking about that stressful shit. I just got myself, let me have my beers and watch my football game and be a numb American. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For real. And so, it goes back to the kind of thing, like, not everybody wants to examine their life. Not everybody wants to question everything. Not everybody is a philosopher like Socrates. The truth is that the reason why Socrates got killed is because not everybody's like that. Most people don't want to investigate their lives. Their ego can't handle it. They don't want to go into their pain. They don't want to go into their hurt. They don't want to sort that shit out. They'd rather go take a medicine, go talk to a psychologist, get on a happy pill, and move on about their day.
And again, take the value judgments out of it.
And was I doing a bunch of value judgments?
No, but
Gotcha. Like, I may have if I was.
No, but to take value judgment out of the equation, there's an opposite extreme that's just as bad too, where it's like, you're having a conversation with somebody at the fucking speedway, and they're like, and somebody makes a comment to you. If somebody turns to you in the speedway and is like, "What do you think? Should I get the coffee, or should I get the 5-hour energy?" It's not super helpful if you just immediately go into a diatribe of, well, what is caffeine?
Yeah.
Do we need it? What is
right.
it? Like, obviously you can go too far in the opposite extreme where all you're doing is philosophizing.
I think what I'm getting to is if we can accept that different people think differently, right? Mm-hmm. If I can accept that you're a different person than I am, you have a different set of experiences, a different perspective. Mm-hmm. If I'm coming from a place where I expect everybody to be the same, my expectation, I'm going to be let down. You know what I mean? And I'm going to resent other people, and I'm going to negatively judge everybody else.
Yeah.
But if I come from a place where I say, okay, even my nephew, who's so much like me mentally, he's different. He's going to make different decisions. And I can't judge him because he's not making the decisions that I would make from sitting outside looking in. But I think a lot of people do that. And that's the kind of projection that I feel like is very common in the world, this projection of there's only one way to do it. I'm the smartest person in the room, and that way everybody should do it the way that I do it. And if they don't, they're stupid.
Or even more pernicious. It's, well, I thought you were like me.
Yeah.
Like, what, you're not one of me?
You're not one of me?
Not one of us?
What? You think differently? Get the fuck out.
Get out of the church.
Get out of the church.
Get out of my church.
Get out of the... You're not even a religion anymore. Yeah, you're disowned. You know what I mean? Like, literally, that happens to people. Like, how many gay kids came out to their parents, and their parents were like, yeah, you can't be gay. It's impossible. Fight or flight, motherfucker, flight. You know what I mean? Like, literally, like, you know what I mean? Like, well, and that's one of those things. It's like understanding that people are different. And, you know, to use gay people as an example, most people can't appreciate, like, okay, there's a sexual freaking drive in most of us, in a lot of us, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, when I was in junior high and the pretty girl walked by and my little Peter was like, hello, you know what I mean? I was like, I'm a heterosexual. I like girls. You know what I mean? But what if I was that guy that was sitting there and the fucking the cute guy walked by and my Peter was like, hello? Well, then I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm gay or I'm bi or whatever, right? Like, I can get that. Like to me, I can't control. There was no control for me other than I could have chose not to wear sweatpants. In junior high. Yeah. You know what I mean? There was no control of me of when I was going to get a boner and when I wasn't. They just fucking happened. Denise walked by. Her hair touched my knee or whatever, right? And it's like, yeah. You know what I mean? It's like my hormones were just like, yeah, let's go.
Well,
you know what I mean?
That was what never, because I grew up like uber fundamentalist, conservative, Christian, like that was our culture, more or less. Mm-hmm. But to me, I think like in high school, like it occurred to me that like, okay, well, how much self-control did I have when I was 13 years old? Virtually none. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so the thing is like when you're a teenager going through school, it's like, yeah, it's like I remember asking myself the question of like, okay, what if I grew up gay? What if I just seeing the guys with their shirts off did something for me and the girls didn't? Mm-hmm. I stopped and ran a little thought experiment around high school, and I was like, okay, realistically, what kind of hell would that be like growing up if I was attracted to girls, but everybody around me was putting all of this pressure on me of, well, you should be with guys, mm-hmm. like you should get a husband someday, and you should you mm-hmm. are gay because we say so. Mm-hmm. That's such a hell to imagine.
Imagine if you're trans, or if you feel like you're trans.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, just to add an extra layer to it. But no, I'm agree with you 1,000%. I think there's one reason why the LGBTQ plus QIA, whatever, how many letters, the alphabet people literally are trying to say is we want to protect that young man, that young girl, that young non-binary person, so that they don't have that thought experiment and go, oh my God, I'm gay, and now I've got a life of hell.
Well, do you know?
Because you did it as a thought experiment. Mm-hmm. You're not gay, I'm assuming. My understanding of you is you're not a homosexual. But if you were, and you did that thought experiment not just as an experiment, but as what is my life going to be like? And you're like, oh my God, this is going to be hell. I got to go tell my fundamental parents who are going to send me to reorientation camp through the church.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then and then all the other fallout that's going to come from that. And, you know, again, I want to bring that back to the danger of projections and expecting that everybody else is going to be like you. And the fact that just because a person has a penis, they should be heterosexual, or because a person has a vagina, that they should like men, right? Yeah. To me, that's part of the danger in that type of projection, and people not going, you know what, maybe other people do things differently. Maybe it's okay for me to do things my way, and I don't want to take that freedom away from anybody. But if you want that freedom, then you should give it to other people, and don't project your freedom onto somebody else's.
Well,
freedom.
do you see how it's ultimately selling yourself short to pass judge? Like if I'm a super conservative, like straight and narrow, like fundamentalist. Do you see how I'm selling myself short by putting all of this negativity, or rather prescribing all of this negative value to the kid who grows up through his whole childhood knowing how he feels, but has to keep it a secret. It's selling myself short as a fundamentalist conservative. Again, this is a thought experiment.
Sure.
But if I'm a fundamentalist conservative and I'm passing harsh judgment on that kid, well, that's another form of projection of, well, if I'd have been that way, or if I'd have acted like that, like nobody would have stood for it. And it's like you're putting a projection on them, but you're also kind of mitigating the task that it was for you to get your shit together when you were. You should probably take more credit. I think kids should get more credit for a well developed, balanced adult. I think that more often than not, the 12-year-old version of the well-balanced, like, put together, got my, uber responsible, like, that adult gets all the credit, but that 12, 13-year-old that went through the process of, okay, well, I have these feelings. I'm not supposed to act on them all the time, but they're there. I'm going to figure out how to process all my stuff so that I can participate in the social world without running around clubbing girls over the head, dragging them into my cave. It's like I don't know, in a way it's like people don't give themselves enough credit when they get stuck in their own projections. Like when you're projecting all this stuff onto other people, it's like I feel like you lose the richness of what brought you here to where you're at.
I think a lot of parents, they'll forget like what it was like to be a kid, and they'll just do the same thing their parents did to them, without even really thinking about it. They just kind of fall into it. But I think that to go back to that fundamentalist person, are they? What was your question? It was like, are they doing themselves a disservice? What was the question?
Well, it's like
because to
me it boils down.
To me, when I think, because I think long term, right? So if I have two parents, they have a child, and that child is experiencing homosexuality in their teenage years, right? And they have these parents that just cannot accept that, right? Because their projection won't allow it, right? Because here's the part of it. It's not about what's going on for the kid. It's about how society going to look at those parents. That's where many of them are. Like, I can't be the guy that's got a gay son. You know what I mean? Like, especially 20, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, who wants to be the guy going into the warehouse or going into the mill or going into the factory and it's like, hey, look, there's Tommy, the one with the gay son. Like, that was not something you wanted to deal with 40 years ago. Again, why the alphabet, LGBTQ plus, QIA, whatever, people are saying is like, that is not an acceptable world for all of these fundamentalists to project their ideas on how we should live our lives and judge us and make society harder for us because of their projections, right, on how I should live my life, because they can't understand it, because they don't have the same experience. And that's what I'm saying as far as the danger of projection is not recognizing that many people have many different experiences.
I think that, and again, like the thing that all those examples that we've come up with so far of like the betrayal or cleaning your room or judging your gay son, it all, like, the thing that they all have in common for me is like, you just have to have no curiosity, like to take any of those hard lines, like to project, like to not want to examine the contents of your own mind to the point where you recognize, oh, this is kind of what I've been projecting here. This is what I've been thinking I've been seeing here. It seems like it comes down to a lack of curiosity. It's like, well, I don't really want to know what's going through my son's head. I just want him to fucking not make me look like a fool at work. Like that, like...
Again, these are the same people that killed Socrates, bro. These are the same people that they don't want to look at how they work. Because then because there's a lot of people who work with an ego that cannot accept mistakes. Right? And so if I go look at my pains and I go look at the hurts and I go look at that, to some people that's a waste of time. To some people that they just don't. To some people they're like, I'm not, why? I got too much shit to do. Why am I going to clean my room when I've got, 10,000 things to do? My room, to me, I used to say this. Why should I make my bed when all I'm going to do is crawl in it at the end of the night and mess it up again? Like, why take the time out to do that, right? Like, I literally had that philosophy in a lot of my life. Like, why bother making my bed when I'm just going to crawl in, I'm going to grab those sheets, I'm going to wring them around, And guess what? I can do that if it's flat, clean on my bed, or I can do that if it's balled up in a ball.
I mean, that's the thing is...
But hold on. Yeah. But let me go, because I'm going to go back to this idea of projection and that... Oh, I almost lost it.
Making your bed.
Well, but I want to go back to the idea that people like me, you, and Socrates who project this idea of curiosity. And who was the other guy? Who was the one that wrote the something well-lived life or the purposeful life or whatever? That was a really popular book. You know which one I'm talking about. The purpose-filled life or whatever. He basically got it off of that Socrates quote of, the unexamined life isn't worth living or whatever. But that's a projection that everybody should look at life like that. And the fact of the matter is I don't want to project that onto you any more than I want you to project the fact that I shouldn't think about these things onto me, right? Because there's plenty of people in my life that have been like, bro, why are you even bothering? Why do you care about what Genghis Khan did in the 1200s? Why do you care about history? Why do you care about this? Why do you care about that? Their lack of curiosity in the fields that I find curious, right? But at the same time, just because I have this aptitude and this love of history, right? I can't project that onto a mathematician, right? And be like, because they're looking at me like, oh my God, what do you mean you don't know what a quadratic equation is? What do you mean you only had college algebra? You didn't go to trigonometry or calculus? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, for them to put that value on me and my interests is no different than me putting my value on them and their interests. But like, why do you want to bother with math? There's calculators everywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's a projection on me. And I think my biggest point in saying all this is that if we understand that we're projecting and we recognize the moments where we're projecting, we can stop. Because guess what? I don't want you projecting your shit on my project. You know what I mean? And look, if I become an internet personality and Cousin Chet is a known person and people start leaving comments and likes and subscribing and sharing and all that jazz, like there's going to be plenty of people in my comments, you should do this, you should do that, right? It happens to everybody, right? Yeah. Look at comments on other people's stuff and you're going to have people like nitpicking and dogging you out and telling you what.
60% that and trolls.
You know what I mean? Yeah, right? Like most of your comments, like, and hey, please leave your comments. Trolls are welcome. But you know what I'm saying? Like, that's projecting onto me and how I should do my thing. And hey, is it a disservice to me? Is it a disservice to you? Mm-hmm. Is it a disservice for you to sit there and waste your energy going, man, I really wish Chet would see life differently? Mm-hmm. Is that, like, now, I can do that. Don't get me wrong. I wish the whole world saw life differently. I wish everybody would open up their eyes and realize that there's a reality here that's beyond the reality we're being given, and that there's so much more to this world than what's on our screens or what's right in front of us. And to accept that ignorance to accept that ignorance.
Well,
And to say, you know what, I am ignorant. So I have no right to project, judge, or otherwise positively or negatively influence you because I see things differently.
Yeah. Well, it was Socrates who said, it is Socrates. Somebody asked him, Socrates, what makes you so smart? Basically.
He's like, because I don't know shit.
Yeah, literally. His response, I think, his literal response is, why do you call me wise? I just know that I don't know anything.
I love Socrates, honestly. One of my favorite people in history, literally.
So here's the funny thing. I like Socrates, but I also like Nietzsche.
Yeah.
And Nietzsche, I don't remember if it's the title, but I remember reading an essay by him, and his thesis of the essay is, maybe Socrates deserved his hemlock. Maybe he should have been poisoned. And his thinking, Nietzsche's thinking behind that is, wasn't Socrates kind of being the uber philosophical prick at the Speedway? Wasn't he kind of just there to ruin everybody else's day? And he was like, well, what was the point? Did Socrates have a point? Or was he just there stirring shit up?
His point was he wanted people to think because he recognized that a lot of people, as you're saying, aren't curious. They want to investigate, and he recognized that there's values in that. He recognized that for somebody to go, oh, the government says this vaccine's going to cure the world. I'm going to go get it, and I'm not going to worry about any of the bullshit that's behind it. Like, I'm just going to blindly follow, right? And Socrates saw issue with that. He's like, wait a minute. Question yourself. Question your own motives. If you just blindly walk up and be like, justice is number one, well, what do you mean by that?
I can't even spell mRNA.
You know what I mean? Like,
why am I worried about it?
You know what I mean? But so for a lot of people, so that was it. And that's what I'm saying. A lot of people got irritated by that. For one, because this process is irritating, right? Because it's kind of negative, Nancy. It's like, oh, so you think justice is good. Well, what is justice? And then you start defining justice and you use another word. And he's like, oh, I see that you use this word liberty to define justice. And so what is liberty? You know what I mean? And so for some people, they find that tedious and boring and they don't want to do that work because it's just not where they want to spend their energy. And in a way,
if you have enough philosophical convos, you get good at noticing when people do that just as a trick to weasel themselves out of a corner too.
Well, and there's that too, right? And then, there are people, and it can be annoying. I know I've done it to people. I do it to people. I'm kind of Socratic in my ways. You know what I mean? I think that I like to examine and question things. And that's just my nature, though. I can't expect that my brother's going to be the same way because he's not. I think it's funny that his son turns out to be more like me, but the fact that he's not, the fact that he just has a different perspective, a different mentality, a different, we've only got so much energy to use to focus and shit. There's a lot going on in this world. Different people are going to tune out different things and focus on different things.
I feel like you might have heard this name before. Have you ever heard of Cornel West? I only know him from one Rogan podcast I listened to.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
I don't remember. He's a professor of philosophy somewhere.
Black dude.
Yep. I can't. Yeah. He might have. Anyway, he might have been from Harvard. I don't remember.
I think he's pretty Ivy League status.
Yeah, he's an Ivy League professor of philosophy somewhere.
Yeah.
But he said something once that that really struck me. He was like, I don't remember what his other point was, but he made this comment once of, there's two seminal figures in Western civilization. Like there's two patient zeros as far as intellectual, philosophical West. The philosophical West has two granddaddies.
Okay.
Socrates and Jesus. And he says, he makes a comment, and interestingly, Socrates never weeps, and Jesus never laughs.
Interesting.
I'm not quite sure yet what that has to do with the overall picture of what we were saying, but for some reason it's like there's something in that for me of like, well, yeah, Socrates is the one who shows up and is like, hey, is anybody curious about anything?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, well, I'll be the reaction to that. I'm happy to drink the hemlock. I'm happy to walk to my death with a smile on my face because I know that I was living authentically.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if that guy has anything in common with even just the even in the mythological frame of Jesus, what the mythology of Jesus and the mythology of Socrates, what those two seem to have in common is it's like, well, think about Jesus. Speaking of walking to your death with a smile on your face, it's like for Jesus, it's you can't make me say anything I don't believe.
Mm-hmm.
And what I guess authenticity is what they have in common. Ultimately, is this desire to lead an authentic life. But Jesus, I think it's a little deeper than that, though. I think what Jesus and Socrates, I think what West is saying when he says that, whether he's trying to say this or not, what I hear is a comment on, okay, the two pivotal figures of Western philosophy, Jesus Christ, Socrates, what they both seemed to have in common was they lived a life where they were they were assessing the strings. They were trying to see, they were pointing out all the strings that were pulling everybody. And it's like,
they were making people investigate their subconscious in a way.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly what it was.
And a lot of people don't want to dance in their shadows. And society doesn't like that. And then, you got a social structure that doesn't want to be broke down. I think that's what broke, the real commonality is both of them were killed because they were just good people. Because they didn't want to, be sheeple, though. Like, we're not talking about mean, aggressive, violent men. I mean, Socrates was in war, and, Jesus obviously tore up the temple that one time, and he killed the fig tree. So he had his episodes of violence as well. But the fact of the matter is like, overall, these are not violent people. They just want to make the world a better place.
I have a point in bringing this up. I have a co-tangential thing to say about that. Have you ever read Moby Dick?
Mm-hmm.
Moby Dick deals with, you think, okay, that's that big book about the whale. It's about way more than a fucking whale. I haven't gotten through the whole thing, but there was a period a while back where it was like I probably got like 5 or 6 chapters deep into it. But the very opening chapters of the book, it's almost like the setting of the book is just like this multicultural island. And it's like Ishmael just rolls up there, and it's like, well, he shacks up with Queequeg, who's like the absolute antithesis of what you'd think of Western civilization. He's a native he's an Aboriginal dude from some nameless, faceless continent somewhere, and he's a pagan, and he's eaten his enemies before, so it's so removed. I don't know how you can I don't know how you can finish or process or read Moby Dick, though. I don't know how you can get from page 1 to page Z.
Is he Canadian? Z.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's a nice turn of phrase, I think.
Australian. He was speaking proper English.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Zed.
But I don't see how you get from page 1 to page Z of Moby Dick if you go into it projecting, like for instance, like Captain Ahab. Is he a good guy or is he a bad guy?
Mm-hmm.
Is he good or is he left wing or is he right wing?
Mm.
Is he on our side or is he on the other side? If you go into it looking for that, looking for that projection, to me it's like it seems like a slog reading the book. But to me the interesting thing about Moby Dick is not is Ahab a good guy or a bad guy. It's just what is Ahab about?
Mm-hmm.
Like, dude, what are you doing and why? Mm-hmm. And it's like the book's answering all these questions about Western philosophy and spirituality and multicultural settings and what the gives and takes of that are. The whole book is a commentary about that stuff. But the question that's the hook that keeps you reading is, well, what's this guy Ahab about? Like, why? Why are you so hell bent on getting retribution upon this giant fish? You were dicking around trying to hunt this guy down in the ocean anyways, and he took your leg. What does that mean that you're going to spend the rest of your life chasing this whale, chasing this dragon? And it's like, I mean, it's not like I understand I'm a fucking nerd at the end of the day. Like, I understand temperamentally. By temperament, I am a curious person. So it's like I have to be careful to not try and project that too much on everybody else. But it's like, I guess I compare it to cleaning your room because I feel like that curiosity is that one room that just very rarely does it ever get touched for so many people. And then it's like people wander around looking for happiness, and it's like, have you ever tried just satisfying your curiosity?
Well, I there are a lot of parents and structures and social things that say it's dangerous to be. You get into the school system, and there's not a lot of room for and sometimes society will kind of kill curiosity because curiosity kills the cat. I need to wrap this up.
Yep.
Dylan, thank you, bro,
Yeah,
for hanging out with me for an hour. Thanks everybody for watching. Sorry to kind of abruptly cut this off. Remember, don't project your shit onto my project, please. But like, share, subscribe, and leave comments. Have a great day. This is Cousin Chet with Dylan. See you next time.